Welcome to the next installment in my video lecture series in economics. This particular video relates to my intermediate microeconomics class at Rowan University. As it says up here on the top, Mondays and Wednesdays, 11 a.m. to 12:15 p.m. At the present date, which is August 20th, it is scheduled to be in the business building, room 301, and I am Professor Guy Pascal. Fall 2017 semester. Just to give you a little bit of information about myself, I have 24 years of university teaching experience, mostly at Rutgers University. This is my first time teaching at Rowan. Also, I have worked in the private sector for most of my career, and additionally, I have been an entrepreneur owning my own business. So I want you to be aware of that fact, that I also have the perspective of somebody who has worked in, I don't want to say the quote-unquote real world, but I guess I will say that, and also an entrepreneur, somebody who has started their own business and run their own business. So I have those dual perspectives with which I approach teaching. So make sure you're aware of that. I don't look at these courses that I teach as merely a class. I look at them as a means for students to improve their skills so that they can perform better in the labor market and be more valuable employees in the future. So realize that I might point out things to you, some shortcomings that you might have, but this is done in the spirit of hopefully you improving those skills and being much more valuable in the labor market. Presently, as you can see here, office is to be determined. So as of 8:20, I've yet to be told what my office is. So once that becomes finalized, I will update the syllabus to include what the office is. Office hours are going to be on Mondays and Wednesdays from 12:30 to 1:30, and then again from 5 to 6 p.m. Also, if additional office hours are necessary, we can make special arrangements for additional office hours. I was told that this is my phone number. I don't know if that has exactly been finalized. We shall see if that is the case. I would tell students to only use or to call me when it's an emergency. For example, if they don't have internet connectivity or some issue comes up. Because I'll be honest with you, I would much prefer that correspondence go through email. So that is going to be the primary way that we will correspond outside of the classroom, will be through my email. I try to look at my emails 3 times a day, once in the morning, once in the afternoon, once in the evening. And I try to get back to students within 24 hours. In some instances, I might not have a response for you right away, so I will just tell you in my initial response that I will get back to you if I am unable to answer your question at the time I'm reading your email. So just be aware of that. Like I said, I would strongly suggest not using the phone number and using email. Only use the phone as an emergency. Textbook, we're using Microeconomics by Perloff. It's been published by Pearson Publishing, and it's the 8th edition. Additionally, we are going to be using Blackboard at Rowan. So you have to have regular access to a computer and internet access. And just be aware, as I said, this is my first semester at Rowan, so I'm a bit of a noob, I guess is the phrase that people use nowadays. I would say neophyte at Blackboard. So I would apologize to you up front if I'm a little slow with things in using Blackboard, because I'm still familiarizing myself with the system. As you can imagine, I've been using another system for quite a long time, and Blackboard is very different from it. So I'm muddling my way through as best I can to get myself up to speed. Also, we are using my Econ Lab, which is an adjunct to most Pearson products. I will have instructions on how to enroll in this particular product on Blackboard. I will put it in the same section that the syllabus is in and this particular video is in. You make sure that you enroll with this. Also, with this, you can purchase a copy of the e-text or access to the e-text and access to my Econ Lab directly from Pearson Publishing. My experience is this provides a significant cost savings versus buying a hard copy of the textbook with an access code to my Econ Lab. So if you're looking to save some money, that would be a very viable option for you. Also, I like to point out that the e-text and access to my Econ Lab are very well integrated with one another. For example, if you're working on a particular homework problem, and you think you need to review some of the material in the textbook, generally there are links in the question help download that you, not download, drop down menu that when you click on it will take you roughly to the area of the textbook that you need. So it's a pretty efficient way of doing homework, going back to the textbook to review material if you think you need to review the material in order to answer that. So I would strongly recommend that you purchase the electronic textbook and my Econ Lab access directly from Pearson Publishing. As I said, there will be enrollment instructions available on Blackboard in the same area that the syllabus is located. And the review of this course, or the overview of this course, as it points out here, to take a look at how individuals, policymakers, lawyers, judges, and firms use microeconomic tools to analyze and resolve problems that they face. Realize that this is much different from an introductory course. Although the topics will be similar, we are going to cover them in much greater detail, and we're going to cover additional material. So make sure that you're aware of that. Further, calculus is going to be used in this course. I will spend a little bit of time going over the calculus that you need to use in this course. I also have a video I've produced to show students how to actually take a derivative of a function. So I will be placing some of those videos that I've made for previous courses that I've taught, so that they will be available to you. I'll probably be creating a video section in Blackboard for that. Here are the major concepts that we're going to be looking at: supply, demand, and functioning of markets, applications of supply and demand analysis. We're going to be doing real-world applications. Consumer theory, consumer choice theory and its application. We're going to be looking at production and costs of firms. In particular, we're going to be looking at the competitive model and how it's applied. And then we're going to compare that to different models, market structures, monopoly, oligopoly, and monopolistic competition. Additionally, we'll be talking about general equilibrium and economic welfare. Pricing and advertising is an important topic in this particular course. We'll be doing some game theory. So you'll be introduced to game theory and the concepts of game theory and how game theory is being used. So if you end up taking an upper level course on game theory, that will be a good basis for you prior to taking a game theory course. Interest rates, investments in capital markets, and uncertainty and imperfect competition. Preparation for class, I want you to be very much aware that you should be reading chapters prior to coming to class. I've found that if students do this, read the chapters ahead of time, they're more prepared, less likely to get lost, etc. Also, if you're reading through stuff and you don't understand it completely or a little confused by it, you'll know that as I review that, that's something that you need to spend or pay particular attention to. All right, don't be afraid to ask questions. My job is to teach this course. And if you don't ask me questions when you're confused, I can't help you with those issues. So make sure you realize that. If I don't know you're having that problem, I'm not going to say a mind reader. All right, I try to figure out if students are struggling with a concept, but I can't pick that up from every single student. I know that some students aren't comfortable asking questions in class, so you can stay after class, come to my office hours, ask for additional office hours. As I said, my job is to teach this course and have as many students understand it as possibly can. Grading, there are going to be 3 tests. I usually have specific dates for tests listed on the syllabus, but as I previously told you, this is my first time at Rowan. Additionally, when I've taught courses at other universities, I usually teach at nights and only teach one night a week. So it's a little easier to come up with when an actual date is. So during the semester, I'll sort of gauge approximately when we should be taking the test, so you'll have some advance notice instead of 2 days from now you're having a test. Realize that the final is optional. You are not required to take the final exam if you don't want to. All right. If you're happy with your grade, generally what I do is I will post what I refer to as provisional grades for the course. So after the third test is done, I will post provisional grades. And if you're happy with your grade for the course, your provisional grade becomes your final grade for the course. All right, so you are not required to do it. If you're unhappy with your grades, you can take the optional final if you decide to do so. There are 10 homework assignments. Also, attendance counts towards your grade for the course. Please realize that I take attendance randomly, and it is your responsibility to make sure that you received appropriate credit. If you come in late to class, it is your responsibility to inform me that you came in late for class and ask whether or not attendance was taken. And if it was taken, I will give you credit for being in class. I do not give retroactive attendance for a course. If you come to me in the last week of school and say, oh, I was there much more frequently than that, I showed up on this date, etc., you're not going to get credit for it. You have to tell me that particular day. So make sure if you're uncertain whether or not I got your name, or that if you came in late, that you come and see me after class is done to make sure you received credit. All right, the optional final is only available if you have taken all 3 of the tests. If you fail to take a particular test, the final exam will be your makeup test. Realize that. All right. For the tests themselves, they only encompass material that was covered prior to that particular test. So they are not cumulative. However, the optional final exam is cumulative. If you miss a test, as I said, you are required to take the optional final, and that optional final will replace the score that you missed. Alternately, for example, if you are not happy with your grade, what I will do is I will replace your lowest test score with your optional final grade. So for example, if you've taken all 3 tests and you're not happy with your grade, if you take the optional final will replace your lowest score. All right? If you miss a test, you're required to take the optional final exam. Here's the weights here for the course: 30% for homework, 10% for attendance, and 60% for the tests themselves. Here's how the grades are assigned, and I believe this follows along with the standards that Rowan has set out for grades. Realize here, very important, this particular one, no extra credit for this course. I've never given extra credit in my entire university teaching experience. I want everybody to know this. If you ask me for extra credit, it will be denied. So make sure you're aware of that. Classroom behavior, just make sure that you act appropriately. One thing I have a low threshold for is individuals who are disruptive in class, in particular because it causes a disruption to me, causes me to lose my train of thought. Going over these concepts, it's quite difficult to try to clearly explain them to students. It can be quite difficult, and if individuals are disrupting class and breaking my concentration, it makes it that much more difficult. The other thing that occurs is that it is disruptive to other students who are trying to pay attention. All right? So the thing I usually talk about is, I remember an old-time comic, George Carlin, who had an comedy album called Class Clown, and he was constantly goofing off in class. And one of the quips he made is, since I was depriving myself of an education, I thought I should deprive everybody else of their education. So just don't engage in that activity of disruption. If you want to goof around in class, just don't come to class, come in, get your attendance, credit for your attendance and leave. It'll be much better for everybody in the class if you are the type of person who wants to be a disruption, to just not be in class and disrupting everybody else. If it becomes an issue, I'll just ask you to leave. If it becomes a long-term issue, I will refer the issue to the appropriate individuals at the school, whether it's deans or the Office of Student Life. All right. Also, you shouldn't have any electronic devices. Make sure if you have a phone, turn it off. You don't need to text or take phone calls while you're in class. So that's the case. You can't record things. All right. There's no reason to record any devices in class. So, and be respectful to the individuals in class. If you have a need for accommodations, you have to go to the Special Services Center and submit the related documentation. Get the related documentation from the Special Services Center, and then that will be forwarded to me, and the accommodations will be made by Rowan University. All right, so make sure you're aware of that. If you have a disability, you can go to the Academic Success Center with that, and they will help you with any accommodations that you need. If you have any questions, you can talk to those individuals at the Academic Success Center. Academic integrity. Rowan's committed to academic integrity, so you're going to be required to acknowledge and cite the ideas of others and identify contributors to any work that you submit, and make sure that you don't submit work that has impermissible collaboration. Information on academic integrity is in the student information guide, and you should be aware of this, and you are responsible for understanding the different types of academic misconduct. With Blackboard, you should check Blackboard periodically. As I said, we are using my Econ Lab, so this might be something that I make some changes to. My Econ Lab has correspondence, email, etc. built into this. So for the final version of this particular syllabus, this might be modified that we are only using my Econ Lab. My experience at other universities and their classroom management systems and using them with my Econ Lab is that sometimes there's a little bit of confusion about where to go. Do I go to Blackboard? Do I go to my Econ Lab, etc.? So there's a possibility that we might be exclusively using my Econ Lab for this to avoid those types of problems in the future. Deadlines, just to make sure you are aware, I expect students to meet deadlines. If you want an extension, you can make this extension via email, request via email. If I receive the extension request prior to the deadline, you will receive a 1-day extension without penalty, no questions asked. You don't have to give me a reason why. It's irrelevant. If you ask for a 1-day extension, you will be given a 1-day extension automatically. Also, with the assignments, if you do not request an extension and you want to make up the work, you have to email me and I will reopen the assignment for you. However, remember that the penalties are quite stiff. They start with 30 days for the first day. So for example, if you missed the deadline and send me an email after the deadline, I will reopen your assignment for 24 hours till the next 24-hour period, but you will be penalized by 30%. And what happens is that for every additional day past that day, there's an additional 10% penalty. So for example, if you're 2 days late when you didn't request an extension, you get a 40% penalty, 3 days late, 50% penalty, etc. So make sure that if you're not going to get the work done, that you email me ahead of time and get that penalty-free extension. It's very important. I'm very strict about these types of things. Also realize that if you don't do an assignment, all right, so if you have an assignment and once it becomes 7 days past due or more than 7 days past due, it's automatically a zero. I automatically go in and you will not be able to make up that work. So realize that if you want to get partial credit for a homework assignment that you're late for, make sure you request it prior, obviously before the deadline, but if you do it after the deadline, make sure that you do this before 7 days, because once an assignment is 7 days past due, it automatically becomes a 0. If you request a 1-day extension and you fail to meet that 1-day extension, the first penalty will start at 40% and will increase by 10% for every additional day. So it's in your best interest, if you get that 1-day extension, to complete all of that work within that new deadline. Now, of course, if you have a medical reason, but you have to send me the medical reason. All right. So let's say if you are sick, you have to email me prior to the deadline and tell me, I was sick, I went to the doctors, and here's the medical documentation to prove that I was unable to complete the assignment for medical reasons. Emailing me and telling me that you couldn't get the assignment done because you were ill without the appropriate documentation is not going to be acceptable. All right. So realize that if you are claiming a medical reason for not getting work done, it has to be accompanied with appropriate documentation. Also, make sure you save all your class materials until after you receive your grade. I do not give out incomplete grades for incomplete work unless you arrange so in advance. So if you wish to get an incomplete grade, you have to request that from me prior to me submitting the grades. All right? Make sure you realize that if I've already submitted, if you have not done your work, you will get an F for the course. I will not give incomplete grades unless it's arrangements have been made. And when I give out incomplete work, we set out new deadlines, and you have to meet those deadlines. All right, you can withdraw from the course at any time. I guess you would talk to the registrar's office about withdrawing from a course. If you have a dispute, we can meet and discuss your dispute, and hopefully it will get resolved. All right. If that is not initially resolved, the professor will meet with the chair to further this along. I have to be honest with you, in 24 years, I have had very rare instances where students have complained. I think I've had 2 students in 24 years complain about the grade that they got in a course. All right. The reason being is that I set out this syllabus with the guidelines, and the guidelines are quite clear about how grades are to be assigned and how students can conduct themselves. If you fail to meet the standards that are set out in the syllabus, that falls upon you. So I'm very clear about what I expect from students. Realize that, again, with attendance, there is no such thing as retroactive credit for attendance. I'm reiterating this. So it is your responsibility. If you aren't sure whether or not I got you as being in class, or you came into class late, it's your responsibility to come up to me at the end of class and say, did you take attendance? I came in late, I didn't hear you, etc., to make sure you get the appropriate attendance. And this is the outline of the course, and just by section, I break it into 3 sections that relate to the material that are going to be on the test. So we do the first 6 chapters in the textbook, including the introduction, supply and demand, applying the supply and demand model, consumer choice, applying consumer theory, and firms and production. And this will end with test number 1. I normally have chapter 6 in this next section. However, I have found that this first section here is a little shorter than section 2 from my historical experience. So just to sort of break the course up into 3 relatively even sections, I have moved this chapter 6 into the first section. So section 2, we go through chapters 7 through 11, and then chapter 13, cost, competitive firms and markets, applying the competitive model, general equilibrium and economic welfare, monopoly, oligopoly, and monopolistic competition. And test 2 will only cover material in section 2. And the final section is chapters 12, 14, 16, and 17. Pricing and advertising, game theory, interest rates, investments in capital markets, and uncertainty. And then we will have test number 3, Again, I normally have exact dates for these, but as I said previously, given the fact that this is the first time I'm here at Rowan, and as I said previously, I normally only taught evening courses that met once a week, so it was a little easier to predict at the beginning of the semester when a particular test would be. Again, the optional final, the university hasn't actually published the final exam schedule, so once that is published, I will let everybody know what the final exam schedule is. So in closing, just make sure you realize that there's a couple of things, as I said previously. Besides being a professor, I've also been in the private sector working and running my own business, etc. So I have a little bit of a different perspective on versus people who are professors full time. I also, because of that, like to help out individuals to improve their skills so they're more valuable in the labor market. So if you're engaging in activities or conduct where the entrepreneurial side of me thinks I would never hire this person, I let students know that so they can at least be aware of the fact that their conduct is not going to be very valuable in the labor market. As I said, it has not. This will impact your not impact your grade at all, but it will impact your ability in the future to especially be a more productive worker and a valued employee in the future.